Welcome back to the channel, Crypto Trend Trader, with a quick update on Bitcoin. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you it's not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. Alright, we got the Bitcoin chart. I'm looking at the 4 hour on Bitstamp, and just paying a little bit of attention here to the price action over the weekend. We are essentially sort of oscillating inside of this basic channel right here. Basically have the TJD TD MACD at the bottom here and the Stoch slope, as well as our moving averages. That's a parabolic SAR with binary pivots and then moving averages, all available for free on TradingView. If you haven't already downloaded those, I highly recommend that you go check them out, throw them up on a chart, and start practicing your own charting. But in the meantime, we're just going to walk through essentially on Friday, we got the cross down to the downside right here on spot and CME futures. And then over the weekend, we kind of pushed back up, sold back off here again. So we're essentially just oscillating right at the 821 cross, waiting to see if that plays out as spot and futures come back into line, which they're basically exactly at right now. It was like right around like 19,000. But what it looks like is basically got picked up once by the 50-55. Twice, 3 times. So we've basically just been like saving price action right there. Next target to the downside is going to be the 89, 18,451, which is still like $700. So it's a decent move. Although at these prices, the percentages are far less for the actual dollar value. If we do come down to the 200s at this point, we have the simple and exponential right down at 17.2. That has given us confluence on the top of the little push up right here. Definitely a possibility for a support level. Could see it come down as high or as low as 16,450, but you know, with these moving averages, we're expecting it to just stair step down. We do have reds on the parabolic SAR, failure to get back above and you know, essentially take out the red SAR at 19.4 is going to lead to continuation and acceleration like this, where you start getting like a steady slope, and then you know, you'll get like a big push down. So that's what I'm expecting at this point in time. You know, there's a couple things that are basically telling me that's real likely to happen. This is a massive divergence and usually an indicator of a big sell-off. You'll see right here, once the histogram sells off below the slope line, and then the slope line stays blue, like here it flipped over red, but then price action was able to maintain the blue slope line. That's basically a divergence. It's telling us that essentially like this is resistance, and yet it's staying blue, which means price action is trying to fight it. But if it doesn't get back above that, you know, it's going to eventually, like, price action is going to line back up with the indicator, and we're going to get a violent sell-off. And that's exactly what happened here. We got to push back up, failed to get back above it, and then it flipped over red and we got a violent sell-off. That's what we're looking at right now. We're still below it. We've got a very strong slope in the blue right here to the upside, which is obviously a divergence because we're underneath it and it's trending strong to the upside. Doesn't really make much sense, but that's basically a divergence there. You'll see we essentially were on top of it and we were almost losing slope back here, and then we sold down below it, and then all of a sudden it started accelerating to the upside. So unless we get a violent move to the upside back above that, the likelihood is that we'll sell off violently. And you'll see that corresponds with, this was the point where we retested, put in a new high once we were underneath the histogram, and then got the violent dump. So, you know, we could potentially even come up and put in a new high as like 19.9, even 20,000, and then get that massive dump. So that's what we're paying attention to right now. And then here we'll look at the Stoch slope. You'll see we have a high, a lower high, and then potentially going to put in another lower high. Just a little bit of support resistance basically down here. We had not sure what happened to my lines that I had drawn right here, but you know, essentially we just had a you know, a series of lower highs, expecting to come up here and potentially sell back off and get another push down. But we're basically just you know, forming like a channel on the stochastics right now, and you know, it's obviously a descending channel at this point in time. We could break out again to the upside and then you know, fail to get back above here, and if we put in a new high, that would give us that divergence we were talking about previously. But you know, we're essentially seeing exactly what we had talked about in our last video. But I do want to just switch over to another chart real quick and take a look at this. What I'm seeing is actually this is probably the pattern that's more likely. We were talking about this in the private group. Essentially, we have a high, we have a lower high, and then we have another lower high, and then we have a flat bottom based on closes, flat bottom based on closes, and then potential to come back down and do the same thing again, or touch this top here a little bit more. But essentially, that's a descending triangle, and typically at the top of a range or at the top of a move, descending triangle is a distribution pattern, and then when you break to the downside, you get a measured move, basically of the meat of the pattern, which would take us back down to like that 17.7 range, which is going to line up with some of the moving averages. It's going to line up with that previous support level that we found down here, and then essentially, depending on how long this stands out here, and comes back down, we would essentially be looking at basically forming a neckline down here at that 16.5 range. And what that's starting to look like to me, and it's still a little bit early to call, but essentially if that was going to be our neckline right there, basically if we continue on down here, essentially down to that neckline, basically what that's going to start looking like is, we're essentially putting in like a rounding pattern over here, and then a little bit more of a pointy pattern right here. That's going to start looking like a inverted Adam and Eve or double top. It's still a little early to tell, but I like to keep an eye on these things before they play out, just so I can sort of be ahead of the markets. But there is definitely looking like some possibility that this could be essentially like a topping pattern. Like I said, it's still a little early to see, but that doesn't have to mean that we're just going to sell off back down to nothing. And again, we could come still and take out that high and, wouldn't invalidate any of this move right here. But essentially, that's something I am really paying attention to. And a break of that pattern is going to flush out a lot of the weak hands and people that FOMO'd in. It's also going to take us back down here to a key level where it would be like retesting resistance as support. Put us down around like 12.9, 13,000. Like I said, it's still very early to tell, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on that. I think there's a high likelihood that we're going to get a, violent sell-off here. We're starting to lose the on-balance volume. When that flips over red, we usually get a nice sell-off, and then that's a good place to reaccumulate. So you'll see here, we consolidated, dumped down below it, consolidated, dumped down below it, and then we're consolidating at it right now, potentially dump down below it. Bring us back down, and then that would be a great opportunity for a buy. And once again, you'll see we get a powerful move up here, on the VPCI, continuation as it sells off, and then a violent dump, which is going to give us our green dots, and then we get a nice push back up, continuation, consolidation as it sells back off, and then we could even get another red dot here and then a violent dump. And those are typically the best places to accumulate in an overall uptrend. So keeping an eye on that, paying attention to it, see how it plays out. We have quite a bit of price action in the market, basically seeing a little different of a pattern with Ethereum, sort of paying attention to that as well. If we throw like the regression trend up on Ethereum, we're getting like a little bit more of a channel looking pattern and not like that clear cut descending triangle as when we sold off before we got the violent sell off back down to the 89. If we came down on the 200 for Ethereum, that's going to put us basically in like that 520 to 510 range. We already came down and touched the 89 once, but again, if we came back down to the 89 again, that would put us at the bottom of the channel around like 566. So definitely paying attention to that. Pull up Bitcoin dominance. We're basically just consolidating above all the moving averages. They're balled up real tight right here. So, essentially it looks like we're finding support at this point in time, but we could easily sell back off below them. But it's looking like either Bitcoin theoretically is going to be breaking out to the upside, or if we dump, more money is going to flow into Bitcoin, so it will sell off less violently, which either one of those looks like a possibility at this time, although I am biased to the downside. Total market cap cryptocurrencies is looking like a similar situation. We basically have the histogram on top. We have a strong blue slope line this whole rally up here. We're coming back down. We typically find support on it, so that would show like a bounce off of the market cap, which would possibly take us back up to the top of the range. another like 20 billion in market cap. But at this point in time, maybe not as likely, just because we already do have the blue slope here on the Stoch slope. We come back up to like this level here at like 80 and then get rejected. But that could give us a bounce back up to like the top of the range before we got a sell-off. Market cap wise, we could lose easily another 30 billion, take us down to the 21, or essentially like another 80 billion would take us back down to the 50-55. And if we came all the way down to the 89, it's going to put us at 433 billion, which is like 110 billion off the top, 120 billion. So that is a massive dump. Essentially would be like a 20% drop in the markets. And then if we came all the way back down to like the 200s, that's going to put us in a realistic range of like 368 billion, which is essentially like 200 billion off the top. Basically about like 30%. So I think at this point in time, a 30% dump in crypto market cap is not unrealistic. Probably less than that would come out of Bitcoin, and a heavy amount would flow out of alts, but there is quite a bit lining up here. As far as the Dixie is concerned, maybe I'm wrong on this thing. It is starting to look, obviously, testing like key levels to the downside. We did finally find a little bit of support down here, but we broke down on the weekly from the 377. We were consolidating and then broke down past the 528. This is key areas where we would put in divergence and find support. We had talked about this previously, where we basically sold down to a key level, looked like we were going to consolidate, got to move back up, rejection, put in a massive divergence. This is a low, that's a higher low, that's a low, that's a lower low, bullish divergence, and then got a nice move back up from there. That was all the way from 88% to 103%. So basically like a 14% move, which is pretty massive in the dollar. So we could come down here again, double bottom, and then get a push back up. Definitely potential for divergence here as we put in that lower low on price action, low, and we are much higher up still on the oscillator indicator. So if we come down here anywhere above 8.5, it's going to put in some massive bullish divergence and could give us the strength to get back up. But at this point in time, looks like we're breaking down from this triangle and, potentially going to put in that measured move all the way down to like that 78 range. So we will see how it plays out. Definitely looking like there is a possibility for a massive breakdown, although this is a key support level. So we'll see what happens with these stimulus talks. We'll see what happens with the elections, all that good stuff. Everything is still up in the air right now. There are definitely there's definitely some evidence coming out for massive voter fraud. So I think that's going to be indecision in the markets, especially if this ends up going to the Supreme Court. Limited amount of time here, as the 14th is a big date. And then, we're basically like a little over a month away from swearing in the new president, whether that is another term for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. There's a lot of indecision as far as I'm concerned with markets, stimulus, the big V, the holidays, lockdowns. Lot of indecision, and typically that indecision will lead to less bullishness or some bearishness in the markets. So we'll have to see how everything looks. Although traditional markets in the USA are consistently putting in new highs, so they are obviously not seeing any of the signs that I'm seeing. So, well, there you have it, guys. Crypto Trend Trader update on Bitcoin, Ethereum, crypto market cap dominance, and a little bit on the Dixie dollar. If you haven't liked or subscribed, I highly recommend it. Leave me a comment out there if you don't mind. Let me know what you think, if you agree, disagree. But you know what? Be a man, though. If you leave a comment and run your mouth, and then afterwards when you're wrong, don't come back and delete your comment like a little bitch. Leave it up there so you can learn from it. Because if you can't even admit your mistakes, like some little people in this channel, and you come back and delete your comment after you run your mouth and wish me good luck, that makes you look like a pansy. So you might as well just not even watch your channel if you're going to act like that. I'm out of here.